Thanks, Rogan. We're right on 1 o'clock here right now, and our session is running until 2:15. I'd like to welcome everyone to this session on connecting a website that Jason and I, or Wapustum and I, have been working very hard on the last 2, 3 years. And we're specifically going to focus in on the connections to social studies and, in particular, the current social studies for K-6, but also if you are junior or senior high. Um, as you go deeper into the website, you will definitely be able to see the social studies connections very easily. Before we get started and introduce ourselves, I'm going to ask you all to, in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, do two things. If you could put the grade level that you teach, currently are teaching, and where you are. It really helps Jason and I when we're doing presentations to kind of try to visualize where everyone is from. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that, and then I'm going to count to three and have every kind of like a waterfall effect, have everyone press enter. It's kind of a fun thing to do. I see some of you are already putting in the information. Thanks. I should have been clear. But your grade and your location, where you're at. Okay. Go ahead. Most of you are already doing it. Thank you. Oh my goodness, we have someone in Brazil. That is amazing. Forest engineering, wonderful. Calgary, lots from Calgary, Grand Prairie. Wonderful, that's really neat. Take a quick gander through there in a minute and look a little bit more deeply at it. So again, welcome. My name is Kim Barker Kay, and I am in High Prairie, Alberta right now, up in northwestern Alberta. I'm a designer of professional learning for the Northwest region of the consortia, Alberta Professional Learning Consortia. And I've been at it for almost 10 years now, retired, and been doing some work with the consortia. And recently, within the last few years, have been very grateful to be able to work closely with Jason to help to design a website that is very near and dear to my heart and the work that I've done. Most of my teaching career and as a principal as well and a researcher has been in the northwestern region of Alberta that has a very substantial Cree, First Nations, and Métis population. And most of my students and many of my colleagues over the years were First Nations and Métis, which led me going way back as a student from the 60s into having lots of questions that led me into a lot of research and firsthand acquisition of knowledge and understanding of culture, of the Cree culture. With that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Apustum to introduce himself.
Thanks, Kim. Tansakahkel, wapastem tsikasun, East Prairie Métis Settlement of Jania. My name is Whitehorse. My colonized name is Jason Big Charles, and I am coming to you from the East Prairie Métis Settlement in northern Alberta. Um, so I've been in education for many, many years, well over 25 years now. Um, But even before that, I've always been very deeply rooted in my Cree Métis culture, brought up with all of the teachings, brought up on the land with the medicines and the spirituality, the powwow dancing, the ceremony, and I've maintained that lifestyle throughout my teaching career, and I've tried to always bring that into my teaching early on. Just recently, within the past 3 years, I've joined the Alberta Professional Learning Consortia with the Northwest region as a designer of professional learning, like Kim. And my focus has always been deeply on FNMI content and curriculum. I have spent many years in the field as a curriculum specialist, as well as land-based learning and curriculum specialist. So for the past 3 years, I've really tried to bring that work into helping teachers to gain understanding of Indigenous content, especially from the Cree perspective, because that's my background. However, in working my entire life with numerous elders, both in my family and throughout Alberta, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan, having learned how much of our Indigenous cultures uh, very much have a great deal of similarities in our traditional practices and in our belief structures and in our stories and legends and teachings. So I'm very happy to have been working with Kim developing this website for the past few years. And we're just seeing that it's very much evolves, continuously evolves and builds as we move along. So I'm very happy to have you all join me today. And I thank you very much for putting your grade level and location in the chat. We really love to see, like Kim said, get a sense of where everybody is, especially with grade level and location, um, because it's fun. And normally we do an introductory segment when we're presenting, but we've got quite a large group. I suppose we could spend the next hour and a half just introducing each other. That would be fun. Just to hear everybody's story. I think we'll move on with the presentation. So, one of the first things as Indigenous people, uh, when we were looking at the website, and I was really reflecting on my life growing up within the Cree culture, and really reflecting on how does that relate to the teaching process, and what is the process? One of the first things that I learned growing up was the importance of storytelling as sort of the the beginning of transferring knowledge. So within our indigenous cultures, especially our oral traditions, one of the key elements is our legends and stories. And even reflecting on how I was brought up with my parents and my grandparents, when they were teaching, they always began with legend and story to sort of set the stage for what they were going to be teaching me about and the, the content of what we're going to be learning about either that day or that week. So I always got a sense of what was coming by learning to see what type of stories they were telling. So following and staying true to that traditional way of transferring knowledge, I wanted to begin by telling one of our legends. And with this legends, we are told that it's one of the legends that began all legends for especially Cree peoples. So there's everything has a beginning, and we are told that this was the one of the very first legends that were passed down to us. And I'm just going to give you a synopsis of the legend rather than tell the legend because it's quite a lengthy legend. And again, there we really want to ensure we have enough time to get to all the resources and support materials that we have. So with the legend that I was going to tell you, we call it the legend of the rolling head. And this legend was passed down to me years and years ago. And I've heard it many different times, many different variations, but the elements of the legends have never changed. So with this legend, it tells of the first people that were on Turtle Island or on our land, and it was a family, uh, a young man, his wife, and their two sons. A younger son, about 10 years old, and an older son, about 12 years old. And it talks about how they were going through life and doing the regular daily things. The young man would go hunting while his wife would tend to the camp and the children and the collecting of the wood. And the story goes on to where uh, the the mother starts to show signs that something's wrong. She stops cleaning, she stops cooking, she stops looking after the kids, and she's always sleeping. So the young man notices this after a while. He lets it go for a while, then he decides to investigate and find out what's happening. So he follows his wife into the bush where she meets this serpent that comes out of a tree and then turns into a young brave and uh, messes around with his wife. So right away, the man understood that this was not a regular being, that this was what they used to refer to as sort of a bad spirit or a demon. And he confronts his wife later after he coaxes this demon out of the log and he takes its head off. So this serpent head. And once he shows his wife, she just goes crazy and just like she gets possessed. And they end up fighting. Uh, while they were fighting, the man tells his two sons to start running and to run away and just to head directly east into the sun and to never stop running no matter what they heard or saw. So the young boys begin running towards the east. Before they leave, the young man gave his oldest son uh, some helpers or some gifts that'll help them on their journey. So the first gift that he gave him was a small rock. The second was a small piece of willow. The third was a small piece of flint, and the fourth was a little vessel filled with water. So the boys took these helpers and they ran. Meanwhile, the man loses his struggle with his wife and she overtakes him. And with his last breath, he manages to lop her head off. So the boys are running, and I know it sounds gory, but this is the way the legend is told to us. But the boys are running and they start to hear their mother calling to them. And to their horror, they turn around and look, and it's just her head that's rolling after them, following them, calling to them, telling them to listen to her and to come home. So the boys, of course, terrified, they just keep running towards the east as their father had instructed them. And as this rolling head was overtaking them, the older boy remembered he had those gifts or those helpers that he was given by his father. And he throws the first one, which was the small stone. Soon as the stone hit the ground, a huge mountain range sprung up between them and this rolling head. So the boys thought they were safe. However, this rolling head manages to get over those mountains, that mountain range, a huge mountain range stretching from north and south. So the boys start running again as the rolling head comes over the mountain and again starts to overtake the boys. So right away, the older boy looks in his hand and he sees the little piece of willow. So he saw what the little rock had done. So he throws the little willow to the ground, and this huge forest of willows springs up thick and tangled. And this rolling head is sort of getting caught in there and can't get through to the other side to them. So the boys are relieved and they start walking again, not that afraid, until they see this rolling head making its way through this vast forest of willows. And they begin running again. And the rolling head makes it through those thick willows and starts overtaking them again. So this time the boy looks in his hand and he notices he had the little piece of flint was the next helper his father had given him. So he throws the flint to the ground, and when it hits the ground, it starts this huge fire stretching for miles and miles as far as the eye can see, burning everything. And they thought that this would stop the rolling head. But of course, the rolling head manages to work its way through this raging fire that's burning everything in sight. By this time, when it emerges from the fire, it's just grotesque looking and burnt and bloody and awful, even worse than before. And it begins chasing them again. So the boys start running again. This time he's looking at the last helper that he has, and it's the tiny vessel of water in his hand. But he was too busy looking at this vessel of water, and he falls, and it falls in front of them. And where that little vessel of water hits the ground, this huge lake, this huge bay formed in front of them, blocking their way. So for sure, by now they thought they were going to get caught because the rolling head, they could see it coming in the distance. But an old swan happens to be swimming by them in this water, this huge water that had been created. And they asked this old swan to carry them across the water. And the swan agrees, but the swan says it's a really old swan and tells them not to move a muscle, or if they do, he was going to throw them off. Thankfully, the swan gets them to the other side of the water. So the boys sit there relieved, thinking that, okay, this rolling head can never go through, can't make it through this water. But unfortunately, the rolling head as well calls to the swan, and the swan agrees to take this rolling head across, again with the same agreement. Don't move a muscle or I'll throw you in the water. But of course, the rolling head was getting agitated, getting closer and closer to the two boys, and it starts moving. And finally, the swan in the middle of the water throws the rolling head into the water. The boys watched for as long as they could, and no rolling head anymore. All they see was the last few bubbles coming out of the water. So thankfully, they managed to rid themselves of this thing that was chasing them. So the two boys continue on to the east as they were instructed by their father, and they wind up on the edge of the ocean. And it was the west coast, sorry, east coast, where they wound up. Now, from here, we're told that those two boys actually play one of the biggest role in our storytelling as Cree people, because that first, the older boy, we know we call him Nyanips. And the second boy, the younger boy, we're told that this is the character that we now know as Trickster. Well, unfortunately, I can't say Trickster's name right now because it's also within our teachings as Cree peoples and Indigenous peoples that we're not supposed to say his name when there's no snow on the ground. We can only say his name when there's snow on the ground. So I keep true to those teachings because I was taught if I say his name when there's no snow on the ground, then something bad's going to happen to me. I don't want that, so I'll just call him Trickster. So that's the basically the synopsis of what happens in the story of the rolling head. And um, I guess when we start showing you the website, the first thing we'll do is we'll show you how to navigate to that story. If you'd like to read the legend in its entirety, we do have it in print. However, we really wanted to focus on this one for this session because of the deep connections it has to social studies, especially if we're looking at the origin of Canada. By now, you may have sort of got the idea that those mountains that sprung up to protect the boys, we know those today as the Rocky Mountains. The large willow patch that was formed when the boy threw the small piece of willow, we know as the boreal forest in the foothills of Canada. And then when they set the fire and scorched the land clear of everything, we know those as, of course, our plains regions in Canada. And then, of course, when they dropped the water, we were told in legend that that's how the Hudson Bay was created. So it sort of shows us the outlay of our world as we understand it as Indigenous people, even from generations and generations past. There was this knowledge about our land and where we are. So I hope you take the time to read that legend. Just don't read it alone at night in the dark.
Yeah, don't do that. Thanks so much, Jason. So here's the website. It's called, if you haven't seen it yet, it's called Indigenous Culture-Based Learning in Alberta Curriculum. And Rogan's going to share the actual link with you. You can also find it on the APLC website. So of course, Jason's story was very strategic in terms of the focus on social studies. So what we're going to show you is a couple of ways that you can navigate through the site. And the first thing I'm going to show you is on the search. If we put in the story, Rolling Head, what comes up for us is connections to curriculum and the actual PDF. So I'm going to show you the PDF. The story is here. It's quite long. There's a lot more detail to it. And of course, Jason kind of gave us the Reader's Digest version of it, but it is a long story. Okay, we go back. The other thing I would like to just show you if you're doing a search is you will get connections to other areas on the website. And so we're going to go to grade 3. And it takes us right to social studies. Grade 3 social studies and the outcome, students investigate natural and created features of Alberta. And so this story, the Rolling Head story, Jason will be doing a younger version as well, or you can use the PDF that's already there. And if you feel that you need to take some pieces out, you certainly can. But what I would like to point out is in all of the curriculum documents, you will see 2 columns on the right. The first column, Nihia Ways of Knowing. Everything in this column is Jason's knowledge and teachings that he is sharing with all of us. And we've gone through every single grade level, all subject areas, and put in those direct connections with the curriculum. We've even sat with elders and had elders go through the curriculum and highlight what they see as being critical, important outcomes, like prioritized outcomes, and help to give us some connections as well. So the far right column called Other Suggestions, some of those suggestions come from elders and some come from other educators who have just some tips and ideas, that examples that you and resources that you can go to and connect to. Okay, so using the search bar, that's going to get you to specific areas. But the rest of it, we have these amazing pull down menus and connections. And so just going to take a few minutes to share with you the content, and then we'll go back to the curriculum so we can take a deeper look at it with the social studies. Is there anything I've missed, Jason?
No, I guess the thing that I really want to underscore is that all of the material that's presented on this website has been vetted by a group of elders and knowledge keepers that we work very closely with. And I think we had an elder advisory group of 15, I believe we had.
Yeah. The other thing before I go too much further is to note, I noticed that a number of our participants are from Southern Alberta region. It's been quite the process that we've gone through with elders and knowledge keepers to vet all of the content on this site. And it's been quite a process. And currently in Southern Alberta with the Blackfoot Nations, they're looking at going through the same process, similar process. And instead of slotting in Cree and Blackfoot on the website, there's going to be 2 options coming up at some point. One will be in French. Some of it is being translated into French. So you'll have an option here where you can go into the French version. And the hope is eventually, as the Blackfoot nations have gone through the same process, you'll be able to pick Blackfoot options. So it'll be a mirror site. And then in the future, maybe even going further north with the Dene, possibly, potentially. So right now, one thing I've heard Jason say on a number of occasions is that even if you are in Dene country or Blackfoot country, you can take this as a foundation and then look at what the practices are in your exact location, which is kind of cool, a cool thing to do. So on the home page, just to get us started, Jason explains the foundations of Cree ways of knowing and being. And these 4 foundations, Jason set up in such a way to reflect the 4 directions, the 4 colors, and you'll please note in the middle is Cree language. And over the years, I've heard many, many times from elders saying the language is the culture. So we kind of put that in as a very central piece in these 4 foundations. So it's a great way to organize to create a holistic model to help teachers plan and feel more comfortable with infusing Indigenous knowledge into curriculum. So for me, as a non-Indigenous person, man, this 4 foundations has helped me immensely over the years in terms of thinking about how to plan holistically. Included, of course, is a video of Jason telling the story of the 4 foundations. Here you can also get a little bit more information about Jason and his background. And there's just a little video of myself and my journey, most of my life, becoming a culture-based learning teacher, which I still am working on becoming every day. It's not like I'm boom done. It continues and continues and continues. So I just wanted to point out things that you can look at and learn about on that homepage. The elders' voices. Right now we have 1 video on here, but in the process right now with our videographer, a number of videos are being made ready to be put on this site. And example, we have when Jason was doing TP teachings with the elders, an example is Guta Demare, who is Inuit, shared about structures in the far north, about living structures in the far north, which is really neat. And so that, for example, is going to be on this website as well. And a number of the elders who have been guiding us along the way, we're going to have videos of them sharing tidbits about their experiences with teepees, residential school, day-to-day life, just laughing and having fun. Just learning a lot. It's really neat. It's been a lot of fun working with elders. This one, TP teachings, again, the videos are in process and there are going to be a lot of them, and they are going to be very directly linked into phys ed and wellness curriculum, as well as other parts of the curriculum where appropriate, but primarily big time into the phys ed and wellness, which is wonderful. The stories and legends. Jason, I don't know how he knows all these stories and remembers them. It floors me every time, and he can tell you all about that. But we have a video here to begin explaining about some of the storytelling protocols. So Jason shared about how you can't say trickster's name unless there's snow on the ground. He also explains a little bit regarding protocols regarding seasons and the 3 main categories of stories: the creation stories, star stories, and trickster stories. And I'll just show you, I'll go to creation stories. And here the focus is on origins, animal features, and plant features. And there are stories for each of these categories. So I go to origins, and some of these stories, and hopefully in the future, each one will have a video. There is a PDF as well as a video of Jason telling the story. And in some instances, there's rolling head right there. In some instances, we have an elder telling the story in Cree on the video with English subtitles, which is kind of neat to hear the flow of the language, which is wonderful. Okay, the next one is general knowledge videos, and you'll see that they are organized according to the 4 foundations. So traditional practice, subsistence videos, oral tradition, and arts. When we first started working on this website, Jason was for years known as a land-based learning educator. And so we started with a lot of the videos by season. And as we were going along, we're going, holy moly, how are non-Indigenous people or non-cultural insiders going to understand this if they don't have this other foundational knowledge? And so Jason, his knowledge is so part of him that he doesn't stop and think, oh, no one's going to understand this. Whereas myself, as a non-Indigenous person, I'm going, okay, I don't understand that. I need more information. So we started these general knowledge videos, and I'll just go into traditional practice. These videos, even if you aren't a teacher and you don't use them, what is amazing is just deepening your own knowledge and understanding of Cree culture and practices is just, oh my goodness, like it helps me so much to deepen my own understanding. So example, 13 Moons. This one on dream catchers, unbelievable the things that I've learned about dream catchers, kinship and community, mixing and measuring common medicines, plants and trees, protocols on herb gathering. There's just such a depth of knowledge here. Subsistence videos, 7-year cycle, weather and the impact on hunter-gatherer practices, animate, inanimate, oral tradition videos, again, 13 Moons, fire teachings, and a short video that I've created on land acknowledgements. So, and there's more and more and more that's going to be put on here. Arts videos, a beading series is going to be on there shortly. Videos by season have been divided into, of course, the 4 seasons. We're now in fall, so I'll click on the fall videos. Or moving into fall. It feels like it here right now. It's a very chilly day where I am right now, even though next week's going to be in the 30s again. There is lots already added into the fall. Just an interesting piece. Each of these has a learning guide as well. So I just want to show you. Oh, heck, let's go to elk harvest, just out of interest. So you'll see that there are 2, 3, 5 videos in the series, and the videos are below. There's also a learning guide. That's kind of where I come in. I work a lot on the learning guides. Gives you a little bit of a synopsis, a bit of a warning that there are graphic depictions in this series of videos. There's additional themes that I just want to point out. As Jason is doing the teachings, there are other peripheral themes that he touches on a lot that link in with other areas of curriculum and knowledge. So if you teach the sciences as well, there's lots on stewardship. Also, every single learning guide, we've made connections to the legends and stories that are appropriate. So if you're going to do work with these or planning with these videos, then you know which legend or story you can begin with. And here we have the videos in the series. The language piece, in each of the videos, there are English translations and the word written in Cree as Jason uses Cree language. So we also have put them on the learning guides as well. So you can actually see the spelling and the translation. Okay. Then at the end, we try to give a broad just examples of curriculum connections that these videos might have. And we've tried to include as many grades as possible in these connections. And you can see this one makes sense with elk harvest. There's going to be a number of connections with sciences and with environmental and outdoor education. Okay, so I'm just gonna go back. I will just show you one more, just the spring, show you some of the spring ones here. Those are some of the videos that are included in the spring. Another example I just wanted to show really quickly is harvesting medicines. If you go into that, there are many, many videos in this series. And I just wanted to point out the dandelion harvest video is kind of neat. And Jason and I have talked about some schools being in locations where you might not have a lot of trees in the area or somewhere where you can take your students outside and go on an exploratory walk. But most playgrounds in Alberta have dandelions. So if they have not been sprayed, then there's some really amazing connections you can make with curriculum with dandelions, which just wanted to point that out. But I also wanted to give you an opportunity to see how many videos there are, and the connections to curriculum are just unbelievable. Okay, so going back, I'm going to jump from videos by season, and I'm going to jump over to the curriculum by grade. So we have K to 6, and I'll jump to grade 3, since that's kind of where we were at there before. And each core subject has been done and is up to date. And this past summer, the social studies for the K to 3, actually we've done K to 6, is we have updated the drafts. So at the end of the school year last year, Alberta Education made some modifications to the social studies curriculum. So the K to 3 is final, and it shows that it's updated here, and I will just show you. It's all current, and we have gone through all of the wording and outcomes and the cusps and made the appropriate changes. We have updated all of the Nihiau ways of knowing or Cree ways of knowing, as well as the other suggestions. So what you'll see in the curriculum, if it's in blue, that means it's live. If it's not in blue, it's in black, that means it will be pending. It will be coming along. Jason is working his butt off making videos, let me tell you. Story of his life. So as you scroll through, there's some specific examples that will help you to meet those outcomes. Dreamcatcher, Legend of Willow, Story Legend of Willow, Four Directions gives you some interesting foundations. Okay. And yeah, so as you scroll down, you'll see that there are tons of different resources and connections there for you. Okay. For the grades 4, 5, and 6, and I'm just going to go to the grade 5. And you'll notice that for the social studies, because it's not mandatory this year, we still have the old social studies curriculum from 2005 on there, but we've included the updated one as well. So if you go to the updated one, again, it's the same. Everything has been made current. All of the outcomes, everything is the most current one. One of the challenges we had when the curriculum changed with social studies was those of us who were working on filling in these two columns, Jason, myself, and Terry Lynn Cook, and off and on with other folks who were kind of involved, was trying to figure out how to incorporate the traditional ways of knowing and being in Indigenous content into some areas where it might be a little bit challenging. So you'll notice that a lot of the suggestions in the grades 5 and 6 curriculum is under other suggestions. There is a lot here. The grade 6, I'm just going to go to the grade 6 and just show you with the social studies, because of the political, a lot on government, which it kind of was before as well. And so there are a lot of suggestions under other suggestions. And one of the things we were talking about, Jason and I, as we were looking at this, is that this was an opportunity, especially in Alberta, where students in grade 6 could also explore the political structures of Métis settlements and First Nations communities. So Jason is very knowledgeable about treaties, about political structures, and is going to at some point be making a video or more that will be age appropriate, grade 6 appropriate, that talks a little bit about those political structures as well. Anything you wanted to add to that, Jason?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything, Kim.
Okay. All right, so we wanted to focus more deeply on the social studies, but the other subject areas have amazing connections there as well. So the last piece that I have not shown you yet is instructional supports. And some of it needs to be a little bit updated. Some of the samples, lesson plan samples, one of my goals this year is to change them and update them. But one of my struggles as a non-Indigenous teacher in the High Prairie area for years and years and years was how to plan and how to incorporate language and Cree ways of knowing and being into my planning. And I struggled with that a lot. So the 4 foundations model, this placemat that we have right here, and you can download it, you can print it. To me, I just find that the extra explanations around here just, oh my gosh, help me so much with my own planning. So for example, something as simple as picking dandelions. How do you incorporate all of these 4 pieces in here? So there is a story that goes in the learning guide, a story that goes along with the dandelions. It's a beautiful, beautiful little story, which would be really neat to start with in the fall. So their oral tradition right away, and the incorporation of some of the Cree language with the video gives you some amazing words for dandelion and tobacco, sistemau, some really amazing language pieces that you can incorporate in there as well. So the other piece is traditional practice, and ceremony can be something as simple as offering a protocol. And Jason very fabulously explains in offering protocol to plants. I can't remember when he's doing herb gathering, and there is a video in under the general knowledge, is that if you are uncomfortable with the offering of tobacco to the plant, to the dandelion before you pick it, that Jason shares that some elders have said, even if you offer something like a little piece of apple or something like that, that you're of natural, that you're acknowledging the plant and showing respect to the plant before you pick it, then that is very much a traditional practice. The other thing that I often will talk about when I'm doing this type of planning is respect, and talking to the kids that after we're done with the rocks or the dandelions or the leaves or whatever it is that we're picking, how do we show respect to these plants or these natural articles? Do we throw them in the garbage can and take them to a landfill, or is there another way that we can show respect? So that very much ties in there as well. Then the subsistence part is if you are going to be picking dandelions and doing something with dandelions, then you have the subsistence piece and the land-based piece of going out, and you learn about what dandelions can be used for, that type of thing. So food preservation, medicines, teas, all fit into the subsistence. And then in the arts, you can use your imagination. If your subject area is dandelions, um, creating works of art, or could we create a dandelion dance, that type of thing. So for me, this 4 foundations gives me great guidance in pieces that I might not even think about in my planning if I didn't have it. Okay, just a second here.
Maybe before we move on, Kim,
Sure.
I'll just add one piece, especially with the 4 foundations,
Mhm.
that I always like to highlight. When we're looking at bringing Indigenous content into curriculum or into our teaching, one thing that I would really caution you on is uh, the overuse of or overstressing of land-based learning. Because one of the things I've really noticed working with schools and we're working with teachers, there's so much awesome stuff that's going on in terms of land-based learning in education. However, upon really reflecting on a culture, Indigenous culture, especially when I was reflecting on my Cree culture, I really, it really stood out for me that land-based learning is just a tiny piece of the holistic culture-based learning. Because if we focus just on land-based learning, then there's a huge chance we're going to be excluding, say, traditional practice with ceremony or excluding oral tradition with storytelling. One thing I've always made clear when we're working with teachers on developing lesson planning is that never, ever once in my life have I noticed any of these foundations to be taught in seclusion. They're always including either one of the other foundations or all 4 of the foundations. The majority of the time, it involves all 4 foundations in each of our Indigenous teachings. So just a cautionary to keep that in mind, that in order to be true to our ancestral teachings, it's important to really look at trying to include all 4 foundations. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Okay. So also included here are some templates for teachers to use. And this one is in a Google Doc version so that you could open it and just plan directly onto the Google Doc. Okay, other planning supports is a template for lesson planning, and this culture-based teaching theme action planning template is like a unit planning where you are doing cross-curricular planning. Okay. And there are Google Docs that you can just plan directly onto the Google Docs. I'll just open this one so you can take a peek at it. Okay, so for example, subject, you might have 1 or 2 subject going on there. Unifying topic would be dandelions. And then if you're starting with the activity of dandelions, then going in to look at where those curricular connections and subject area connections are. And we have oral tradition, traditional practice, subsistence, and arts. For me, it's a great reminder to have it there, have all 4 there, and always looking at those connections. And of course, the Cree language, the Cree language piece is critically important. Even if you're not comfortable with the Cree language, then hey, students, we're going to learn together and we're going to do some practicing together. And all of the words that we've included, Jason uses those words in his video, so you can hear him say the words over and over again. Okay. Going quickly because of, I guess time's not too bad here. There is a sample, but again, I want to update it. So you can take a look at it if you want, but definitely want to do some updating it. I'm going to skip assessment. I'm going to ask Jason to speak to that in a minute, but I'm going to show you resources. These are just the additional resources that we were talking about as we were working through the curriculum. And rather than slotting them into the other suggestions, we just thought we don't want to create a resource list that for teachers is like, oh my God, and overwhelming, like too much to even wander through. But we wanted to make it just a representative of a few resources that we thought were really important to share. Okay, so there's a few here. As we were working through, we had someone working with us who was very knowledgeable about games. And so we plugged in a lot of different games and put them into one spot. I know she was telling us about a very heavily influenced social studies activity she had done as a teacher called Oh Dear, and she called it Oh Moose. I believe it was Oh Moose. And so just, oh, there we go. Oh Moose and Oh Dear, both are there. And then just a few storybook lists and book lists that we've included there as well. Okay. The last one before I turn it over to Jason to talk about assessment is this seasonal activity planning. This is amazing. If you want your own guide, you can click here and get your own copy of it. But this is basically all of the content that exists and will be coming from Jason. And so if they're in blue, they are there and they're live, and it gives you all of the seasons from January, February, March, starting in January, and then all throughout the year. So we have based on the season. Except for this one are the general knowledge videos. So you can see a complete list of what the general knowledge videos are and which of the 4 foundation areas you would be able to find them. Okay. So just gonna keep going along here and general knowledge. Now we're moving into the seasons, and we have, this is the seasons. The birch tree tapping, which happens in April and May. So you can see the green, that it is a spring activity and the videos that are included in that series. Then we have harvesting medicines and which season they would occur in, and all of these various videos that are in there. For example, harvesting bear fat and then rendering bear fat. So it's not just all plants, harvesting plants. Canning and preserving. Then there is a whole series of common tree names, northern boreal trees, and videos available for them. Elk harvest, fall whitefish, moose, elk, and deer calling, which has become very popular on YouTube. I just have to mention it every time, but very popular throughout the world, actually. Trapping and snaring as we go along, ducks and geese, fire making and safety, whoops, and some winter activities. And I just wanted to point out, we have the powwow and dance series will be coming. And then storytelling. Here you'll be able at the end to get a complete listing of all the stories. Okay. Excellent resource, amazing resource. All right, the last one that I'm going to pass on to Jason is talking about assessment.
Thanks,
And
Kim. With assessment, it's always been one of the other things that I really like to underscore as well as highlight, because ultimately, when we are, I know with working with my elders and knowledge keepers, the ultimate goal that we have as Indigenous people is ensuring those outside the culture understand that our traditional ways of transferring knowledge or our traditional ways of learning are valid ways of learning. And by ensuring that there's an understanding that it is a valid way of learning, that really sort of drove us to the work that Kim and I have done with the website, is to assist with resources in validating traditional knowledge as a valid way of learning by linking it to curriculum. And you could see that in the curriculum documents where we link each of all of the content on the website directly to not only general outcomes, but those specific learner outcomes. So we know that our job as teachers is assessing outcomes and assessing uh, our student success on meeting those outcomes. So, like I said, the biggest task that I had when I was teaching was in linking those traditional activities to curriculum. However, we've done that for you with the curriculum document, so you can see those links already made directly to those specific learner outcomes. So, what's left now is, if you are using the curriculum documents that we've created with those links to cultural content, then essentially you are assisting us in validating our traditional ways of learning and our traditional content by meeting the outcomes that you normally meet. So it's not as though we're saying, okay, here's some other outcomes that you need to meet. No, you're taking the curriculum that you've already been assigned to teach, and you are using the content from the website in meeting those outcomes. So we're sort of like a double-edged sword there, where we're hitting both sides. We're not only meeting our assigned outcomes, we are meeting infusing Indigenous knowledge into our teaching. Because traditionally, as growing up, I always say this, my elders, my knowledge keepers, my grandparents, they were master teachers, especially having gone through the formal education of becoming a teacher and then working with teachers and being a professional uh, in terms of uh, formal education with the teaching process and with curriculum. I started to gain an understanding of just how not only valid, but how the level of mastery that my elders have when they're teaching. Because thinking back and even learning from them, even today, I could see the teaching process that they're going through, and it's no different than the professional process that we learn uh, in our practice. Uh, my grandparents, I remember my grandfather and grandmother beginning with legend, so setting the stage, that lesson opener with a legend, and then going into uh, telling me basically what the outcomes were going to be for that day. Today, I'm going to be taking you out. We're going to be teaching you how to snare rabbits. And that's what we're going to be learning. So from there, they'd go into direct instruction on the skills, making a rabbit snare, then going to the bush and observing rabbit habitat, observing the tracks, observing the food, and then further into that lesson by setting a rabbit snare. And of course, part of that assessment would be, could I successfully catch a rabbit? They were assessing me. Not only that, with their informal assessment, when we get back home, they would quiz me on what I've learned from that day. Okay, tell me what are you going to do when you when I send you out to snare a rabbit by yourself. And then I'd have to describe the entire process. So it was all about they were constantly assessing me, no different than we do as professional teachers in our profession. We're constantly assessing our students. My grandparents were constantly doing that. And then that sort of final assessment where if I caught a rabbit, then I successfully met their outcome and I caught that rabbit. If I didn't, then of course I'd have to go through the steps again and until I gain mastery of that outcome. So again, there it's just that helping to validate Indigenous learning as uh, a valid way of learning with curriculum. And like I said, we've provided you with those curriculum links. As well, if you look on this page here, there are examples of exemplars with Indigenous content to assist you in making your assessments and to sort of guide the process of, okay, how do I assess Indigenous content? Because you can either do what you always do, look at the outcomes that we've made those connections to the Indigenous content, or you can look at more of the activities themselves and use the exemplars that we've provided to assist in that uh, making of assessments. Anything to add, Kim?
Sorry, what did I do? No. That's great. I think that even just understanding that it is the outcomes definitely that are being assessed, right? Um, Not that you're going to be taking kids out and snaring rabbits is very unlikely. But the activity and videos can be linked in with mathematics, with other subject areas, which is brilliant. Okay.
Just looking in the chat there, Kim, somebody is
Yep.
asking if you could show again how to get to those exemplars.
The exemplars
Yeah,
for assessment. Okay,
yes.
so if you go into the instructional supports and go to assessment, basically there are two templates here, or how to use the template, the two templates, PDF and Google. And then if you scroll down, there are some exemplars. Okay, right at the bottom, a few exemplars. Okay. Okay, while I'm on the website still, is there
Uh,
anything else in the chat?
yes, actually. Anne Marie just asked, is there a timeline for the Blackfoot website to be released? I realize it's an enormous task and will take a while, but I'm just wondering about when we can potentially expect that.
Now, with that, there has already been some preliminary work that was done in the spring on beginning to work with elders and knowledge keepers within the Blackfoot community. So it's already begun. And with this fall, once we start up, Kim and I have been asked to step in and assist with that group to help them in developing their content further. So hopefully, since we've already got this website as sort of the blueprint and the bare bones, and we're just really going to be working uh, with the community there to try and infuse that with Blackfoot content. So we're hoping it'll be much quicker than the work that Kim and I put into this website.
Exactly. That was this coming up with this blueprint was enormous. And putting both of our minds together as teachers with the whole thought of we do not want to overwhelm teachers. We want to provide the tools for teachers to be able to do this themselves, but not actually do the work for teachers, right? Like just to provide the helpful tools and not overwhelm with content. So we'll be keeping that in mind as we're moving forward with our southern neighbors for sure. Anything else there, Rogan?
Not. Oh, it looks like Michelle Clark has just popped something into the chat. Is the thought that we will be able to access the Blackfoot website from this site?
Yes. Yep. I think like, for example, like where the search, somewhere along on the home page, you'll probably have the option of French or the option of Blackfoot. And you would just click it and then it would come up for you. Okay, so it'd be like a mirror site. Okay, I am going to stop sharing. And we have a few minutes left. I just thought if there are any other questions, like specific questions. Oh, could you please, oh, the assessment, I'm just looking at the chat here myself. Oh, and also just to mention that Rogan has put the feedback link into the chat. So when we're done, if you wouldn't mind doing that, it would be great. Just doing the feedback piece. All right, so it's 2:06. Do you have any final words, Jason, that you'd like to share? Or?
Uh, I I think I'm good. I can't think of anything at the moment.
Okay. I
Uh,
guess in the back of my mind, sorry, I interrupted you, but in the back of my mind is the social studies. And because this was, and I noticed that I think just about everybody was elementary. If there's anyone there who's junior or senior high, we know that there's going to be some changes in curriculum coming up, starting in the junior high. So we've kind of backed off a bit on the junior senior, but our plan is to work with some junior senior high subject area specialists to get their help with providing more thoughts on links to the existing videos that are there. Because my background, both Jason and my majority of our background has been in teaching elementary school. We did some sessions, just as an example, on the moose calling. We did a session a few years ago, and one of the participants was a physics 10, 20, and 30 teacher. And he was so excited because he said that the video on moose calling helped to hit some of the curricular outcomes on sound and hearing for physics 20. So we need the people who have the knowledge of the curriculum, the special subject area specialists in junior, senior high, and there will be more, definitely a lot more coming.
I
Okay.
see there's a question about what other considerations for non-Indigenous teachers sharing Indigenous culture with students. Actually, that was one of the driving forces behind developing this website, was especially aimed at those teachers that do not have access or readily access to elders or knowledge keepers in their area. So very much that's why we have so many videos of me passing the knowledge on. So you do have that elder knowledge. Uh, I hate to call myself an elder, but it's a honorable title, and it's something that we're taught that we don't call ourselves elders, or other people, if they want to, they call us elders. But just putting it out there that so that you do have that knowledge available to you from an Indigenous person, available to you to use in the classroom. For those, I found that there was a lot of non-Indigenous teachers that were reaching out with the story, especially with the storytelling. They weren't comfortable telling the traditional legends being non-Indigenous. Although our elders tell continuously tell us you don't have to be Indigenous as long as you're acknowledging where the story has come from, then we want everyone to share those stories. However, if you're still uncomfortable, that's why we've begun developing the videos of me telling the stories. So you do have that Indigenous person giving the content available for teachers.
Exactly. On that homepage, that little video that I share at the very bottom, I talk about that. I mean, I'm someone who's been in the education system since the 60s and all of the political oppressive stuff that went along with that. And so trying to negotiate through who's a true elder, who's so many conflicting opinions, you can't do this, you can do that. I'm going, I don't know what to do, so maybe I'm just not going to do anything. So Jason and I have had so many conversations around this type of thing. So we thought we need a website. We need to provide an elder, and Jason is our elder on this website with the knowledge, with the teachings, and the beauty of Jason sharing this. He's also a teacher and a curriculum specialist. As you watch the videos, it'll become very apparent to you that he knows who his audience is. So anyway, because I didn't know half the time, it was like, I don't want to make a mistake. Who am I going to offend? And this way we thought, how can we put together a website where it's validated, if and elders have guided us every step of the way. So you can be completely guaranteed this is elder directed and validated. Okay, I will be quiet now.
Yeah, I see there was another, if we're in a Blackfoot area, we should feel okay using these resources while sharing its a Cree perspective, right? Yes, very
Absolutely.
much. And once you start watching some of the videos, you'll see that I do bring in knowledge from other nations other than my own Cree nation, Ojibwe teachings or other nations. But I do right off the start, I identify them as belonging to another nation. I just identify that nation and ensure that there's an understanding that if I'm passing on a teaching that I've learned from an Ojibwe elder, I am making it clear that this is an Ojibwe teaching, this is an Ojibwe knowledge, and I'm just sharing it or a story. So yeah, just as long as it's acknowledged, I think with the very basics or the foundations, even what I found is uh, so much similarities across nations throughout Canada that so much can of that foundational knowledge doesn't change very much. There's subtle differences, but the basics are very much the same.
The other thing, just a last note too, that you might notice as you're going through some of the general knowledge videos in particular is that um, we've tried to take on some of those very difficult conversations and just tell you what it is. For example, smudging, spirituality versus religion. Another one is cultural appropriation and misappropriation. Kind of taking some of those difficult topics head on and just saying, look, let's have a conversation about it. This is not a mystery. Let's just talk about it. So giving credit for where your source is coming from is a critical piece. Oh,
So with that, even in closing, I'd like to sort of show you the importance of passing on the Indigenous knowledge in an authentic manner, and especially in terms of the cultural practice and the language piece, especially. So I always close by saying, "Kinanaskum tinawalkahkiao." And in my grandmother's tongue, it's been translated as that means thank you. However, when we really look at the language itself, it's not just saying thank you. Translated, when I say "Kinanaskum tinawalkahkiao," my grandmother's tongue it actually means my spirit, my soul has been lifted by this exchange. So you see, the language is much deeper, as are the traditional practices. So the importance of ensuring that those get passed on is vital, especially now when we're in danger of losing a lot of our languages and practices. So kinanaxpom tinawalkah kiel.
Kinenaskomtanao. Thank you so much for joining us today and have a great rest of the week.